That sharp metallic clang, the ceremonial opening of the New York Stock Exchange.
Right, but then immediately that sound is just drowned out.
Yeah, completely. It's this roaring, chaotic crowd noise. But it's not celebration. It's genuine panic, visceral.
Exactly. You hear shouts of sell, 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 all overlapping, right?
Mixed with that frantic, just incessant clatter of the ticker tape machines.
And they're running so uncontrollably fast, they're hopelessly behind schedule.
Telling everyone what used to be true, yeah. Not what's happening right now in that moment.
That sound, the immediate collapse of order into just chaos. That's really the audio signature of a world ending.
Wow.
We were standing effectively on the morning of October 24th, 1929, what we call Black Thursday.
And this wasn't just like a bad day for business, was it?
No, not at all. Our sources, they make it absolutely clear. This was the moment the greatest party in American history came to a screeching, violent halt.
And that's really our mission today, isn't it? We're taking a deep dive into the source material that defines this whole era.
We need to get beyond just the dates and the Dow Jones numbers.
Exactly. We want to explore the cultural side, the financial mechanics, and the devastating psychological collapse that really started that morning.
How did this era of permanent prosperity, you hear that phrase constantly, right?
All the time in the sources.
How did it end so brutally?
We want to understand the players, the mechanism. You mentioned a time bomb.
Yeah, the time bomb right at the heart of the system.
Yeah.
And the failure of, well, institutional confidence.
And we want to meet the Millers. You mentioned them earlier.
Yes, the Millers. Our sort of hypothetical average American family. They thought they'd found this safe, simple ticket to the American dream.
Only to find themselves, completely ruined in just 5 days?
5 harrowing days, yeah. Wiped out. How did a country that felt so invincible, so modern, walk willingly onto this unregulated financial high wire act?
That's the question. So to answer that, I guess we have to start with the environment, right? The setting, the players.
Exactly. What made the crash even possible?
Okay, let's unpack the Roaring Twenties. I mean, the common image is, speakeasies, jazz, flappers.
Sure, that's part of it. But the sources, they really emphasize that the underlying mood was one of profound relief and optimism.
Relief from the Great War.
Yeah, this generation felt they had permanently overcome that trauma.
Yeah.
And technology was like their proof, their evidence.
It wasn't just relief, though. It was more like a fundamental break from the past.
That's a good way to put it. They genuinely believed they were in the new era, where the old rules, cycles of boom and bust, scarcity, they just didn't apply anymore.
And technology fueled that belief.
Massively. Electricity was spreading like wildfire, transforming homes with what people literally call magical new appliances.
Right, things we take for granted now. Refrigerators, vacuum cleaners. They weren't just conveniences, were they?
No, they symbolized a higher standard of living, one that felt permanent and crucially accessible to almost everyone.
And the radio, bringing news, entertainment, a shared culture right into the living room, kind of knitting the country together.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the big one, the automobile.
Henry Ford.
He didn't just invent the assembly line. He democratized mobility. For the first time, having a car was actually achievable for many working families.
So all this together, it just radically changed the definition of a standard American life.
Totally. It wasn't just about food and shelter anymore. It was about owning these tools of modernity. And, that required capital, money.
And this modernization, this cultural shift, it also fueled a huge demographic change, didn't it?
Yes, that's critical. For the first time in American history, the majority of the population lived in cities. Urbanization.
Why is that so important for the financial story?
Because cities became these concentrated hubs of economic activity, sure, but also information exchange and maybe most importantly, investment buzz.
So everyone saw the prosperity around them.
They saw it, they heard about it, they felt it. It fueled this sense that if you weren't investing, well, you were missing out on guaranteed wealth.
Which brings us neatly to the new American investor and those early symptoms of overheating. We have to start with that Joseph Kennedy story, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the ultimate indicator of market saturation and, frankly, irrationality.
So the story goes, it's spring, 1929.
Yeah, spring 29. Kennedy, already a very successful, very savvy financial operator, is getting his shoes shined one morning.
Okay.
And the young boy, cleaning his boots, out of the blue, starts enthusiastically giving him stock tips.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that. Kennedy didn't ask, but he listened politely, paid the boy,
And then?
and then immediately went back to his office and ordered his brokers to sell every single stock he owned, liquidate everything.
Why? What was the signal there?
It was pure, cold financial logic for him. He recognized that when the shoeshine boys, the taxi drivers, the barbers, the average person with zero financial training,
When they're giving out stock tips.
it means the whole system is saturated. As Bernard Baruch, another wise financial head at the time, put it, it signaled there was no one left to buy.
Everyone who could possibly be pulled into the market was already in.
Exactly. The well was dry.
So this isn't just some charming anecdote then. It's a real warning sign. The market had become America's new national pastime, kind of replacing baseball.
It had. But this democratization of participation, as our sources really stress, was fundamentally dangerous.
Oh.
Extremely dangerous.
Yeah, because everyone could play.
Because it was a catastrophic mismatch. You had this democratization of high-stakes financial risk spreading to the general public.
Okay.
But there was zero corresponding democratization of financial knowledge. Or safeguards, none.
So people were handling complex financial tools.
High-leverage instruments, yeah. And they understood them about as well as they understood, say, the inner workings of their brand-new refrigerator.
Yeah.
Which is to say, not at all.
To really feel the risk, let's go back to that hypothetical family, the Millers. They get sucked into this dream. They weren't wealthy people.
Not at all. We have to put their stakes into context. In 1929, the average manufacturing worker maybe made about $1,400 a year.
Yeah. Okay, so life was manageable, but saving was tough.
Very tough. And the sources emphasized the pressure families like the Millers felt. They saw their neighbors maybe building an addition onto their house or buying a new car.
Just from playing the market.
Yeah, that's how it seemed. Easy money. So when the Millers decide to liquidate their savings, let's say it's $2,000, a huge sum for them.
That's more than a year's salary?
Exactly. They're risking more than a year's hard-earned wages when they put that into the market.
But they didn't see it as a gamble, did they?
No, they saw it as a calculated, safe move. Why? Because the broker promised them it was their ticket to this new American dream, a permanent shortcut to the prosperity they heard about on the radio.
And who facilitated this dream? The broker, obviously, but there were also these figures of authority, right? Like Richard Whitney.
Ah, Richard Whitney, yes. The vice president of the New York Stock Exchange himself.
The image of respectability. Groton, Harvard educated.
Impeccably dressed, the epitome of old money and established authority. He represented the institutional confidence that assured the Millers, hey, the system is safe, it's run by responsible men like me.
So Whitney was like the high priest of the temple.
And the broker was the friendly facilitator at the door.
Yeah.
The one who didn't just sell you the stock, they sold you the magic trick.
The magic trick that let the Millers buy way more stock than they actually had cash for.
Precisely. That trick buying on margin,
Yeah.
That's the structural fault line we absolutely have to understand. It's the engine.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core engine of both the dream and ultimately the nightmare, buying on margin. It sounds like financial jargon, but the sources describe it almost like a circus act.
Yeah, the financial equivalent of a high wire act, but with absolutely no safety net below.
Let's break it down, use an analogy maybe.
Okay, let's make it transparent. The amount of leverage available back then in the late 20s was extreme. Truly extreme.
How extreme?
Imagine you want to buy $100,000 worth of stock, a big investment, but you only have $10,000 in cash.
Okay, so 10% down.
Right. Under the common margin rules then, you could put down your $10,000 and the broker would essentially arrange a loan for the other $90,000.
$90,000, just like that.
Just like that. The stock itself, that $100,000 asset you just bought, becomes the collateral for the broker's loan.
Okay, I see the appeal. The upside must have seemed amazing.
Intoxicating.
Yeah.
If the market goes up, say, 20%, that $100,000 portfolio is suddenly worth $120,000.
So you've made $20,000 profit.
On your initial $10,000 investment, you've doubled your money on paper very quickly.
You can see why everyone rushed in.
Absolutely. It created this dizzying, dramatic wealth creation seemingly out of thin air. But the real systemic risk here wasn't just that our Millers were leveraged up to their eyeballs.
What was it then?
It was who was supplying that other $90,000. Where did that loan money actually come from?
Ah, this is where call loans come in, right? I read about that. It sounds crucial.
It is absolutely critical to understanding the fragility of a whole system. Who was lending all this money for margin buying?
Right.
Banks? Yes, partly. But increasingly, it was this massive decentralized pool of capital. It came from huge corporations flush with cash from a booming 20s, even wealthy individuals. They would lend this excess cash to the brokers on call. And on call meant exactly that, meaning the lenders, the corporations, the banks could demand their money back instantly with basically 24 hours notice. Call it back.
Wow. So if a big company like, I don't know, General Motors suddenly decided they needed their cash back from the call loan market.
It would create an immediate, painful liquidity squeeze on the brokers, like turning off a tap.
And the brokers then had to turn around and get that money from
the investors, from the millers.
That's the domino effect.
Precisely. The call loan structure effectively tethered the stock market, this speculative, shimmering bubble, directly to the core banking and corporate sectors.
So collapse in one could instantly trigger a crisis in the other.
Instantly. It was a system wired for contagion.
Which leads us right to the terrifying flip side of all this leverage, the margin call itself. What happens when the stock price inevitably drops, not rises?
Okay, back to the millers. Their $100,000 stock portfolio suddenly drops in value. Let's say it falls to $85,000.
Ouch. So their initial $10,000 is gone, wiped out.
Gone. And worse, the broker is still owed $90,000, but the collateral backing that loan is now only worth $85,000. The broker is suddenly underwater.
So the broker gets nervous, or maybe their own call loans are being pulled back by the big lenders.
Exactly. Either way, they immediately issue a margin call to the millers.
And that means?
That means the millers have to deposit more money, hard cash, not stock immediately, right now. Enough cash to bring the value of their account back up to a safe level relative to the loan.
But what if the millers can't? I mean, they already put in their $2,000 life savings for the initial margin.
If they can't produce that extra cash within hours, maybe a day at most, the broker doesn't wait, doesn't negotiate.
They just sell.
They instantly sell the miller's stock at whatever fire sale price they can get in the falling market. Their only goal is to recoup their loan amount.
Which often resulted in what the sources call a ruinous loss.
Ruinous is the right word. It meant the millers didn't just lose their entire $2,000 savings. If the stock sale didn't even cover the $90,000 loan,
they would still owe the broker money.
Yes, they were financially obliterated, wiped out, and potentially saddled with debt they could never repay.
What I find so compelling reading the analyses is how they contrast this financial tool, margin, with the physical technologies of the era.
That's a brilliant comparison. Margin was a social technology, a new way of organizing financial risk. And it was adopted with the same blind, uncritical optimism as the radio or the vacuum cleaner.
But the difference in impact
is massive.
Right.
If your new car breaks down or your refrigerator fails, it's a problem for one family. Tragic, maybe, but isolated.
But margin debt wasn't isolated, was it?
Not at all. It was a fundamental societal mechanism woven through the entire economy via those call loans.
And unlike the car, which eventually got safety features, brakes, traffic laws,
this financial social technology, margin lending, had no safety features, no traffic laws, and absolutely no understanding, as one source puts it, of its potential for a mass casualty pileup.
That analogy just perfectly underscores the systemic failure, doesn't it?
It really does. The system lacked the basic safety nets we just assume exist today. There was no Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, monitoring the exchanges, regulating margin limits, policing fraud.
And crucially, no FDIC.
No Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Nothing. The entire financial edifice's towering structure of debt was built purely on uncontrolled leverage and, well, absolute fragile confidence.
So the party's raging, the music's loud.
But if you were listening really closely, you could start to hear the floorboards groaning under the weight of all that debt, all that hype.
And the first clear warning, it seems, came from a voice kind of in the wilderness. Roger Babson.
Roger Babson, yeah. An economist known for making some correct calls in the past, but definitely not part of the Wall Street establishment. An outsider.
And on September 5th, 1929, he stands up and says what?
He delivers this absolutely terrifying prophecy. He said, sooner or later a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. And crucially, he added, people who are loaning money to stock exchange brokers,
the call loan lenders,
will find that they are absolutely ruined. He was pointing directly at the systemic risk of the call loan market.
Wow. How did the market react?
Immediately. It dropped 3% that afternoon. People actually nicknamed it the Babson break.
Okay, so maybe people started to get cautious.
Quite the opposite. Instead of prompting caution, Babson's warning prompted institutional fury, total backlash.
Fury? Why?
Because the establishment, the bankers, the brokers, the politicians whose power and wealth depended entirely on the market going up forever, they couldn't handle dissent.
So they attacked him.
launched a campaign to discredit him, called him a pessimist, a fool, even questioned his patriotism, suggesting his words were somehow damaging the glorious American economy.
Unbelievable. Talk about denial.
Doubling down on denial. And the level of it was just astounding. Just days, literally days before the actual collapse, you get that infamous quote from Irving Fisher.
Oh, yeah, the Yale economist. Hugely respected figure.
One of the most respected economists of the era. And he declares stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau.
A permanently high plateau, days before the biggest crash in history.
That single quote, it just perfectly encapsulates the cognitive dissonance of the age. It reflects that central defining conviction. This time is different.
They really believed it.
They genuinely believe that new technologies, new management techniques, the sheer power of American industry had somehow repealed the old economic laws of gravity.
And the market actually rallied after the Babson break, didn't it? Hit its all-time peak.
It did. September 3rd, 1929. But beneath that paper confidence, the sources clearly show the foundation was crumbling. There was this critical disconnect opening up.
Between what?
Between the soaring stock market and the actual real economy.
So stock prices were going up?
Driven purely by speculative debt and sentiment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not by actual company profits or production increases.
Well, the real economy was.
Stalling. Measurably stalling. Steel production was down, construction activity was sluggish, and maybe most importantly, car sales. The bellwether of American progress were falling off a cliff.
Which highlights another crucial pre-existing condition, right? The economy was already kind of choking on itself.
Absolutely. Overproduction relative to consumer wages. Average wages just weren't keeping pace with the huge productivity gains of the 20s.
So factories could make more stuff cheaper?
Faster and cheaper than ever. But the average Miller family, with their stagnant wages, may be already using credit to buy those shiny new appliances. They simply couldn't afford to buy all the output.
Where did the profits go?
They were bottlenecking at the top, fueling more stock speculation among the wealthy and the corporations, while the actual consumption base, the foundation, was shrinking.
The market had become, as one source put it, a shimmering bubble.
Completely disconnected from the slowing economic reality underneath, it was floating on pure belief and borrowed money.
By mid-October, things started getting shaky again.
Yeah, the tremors couldn't be dismissed as just a fluke anymore. The selling, which had been kind of slow and steady, started to intensify, became more urgent.
And October 23rd, the day before the big one.
Wednesday, October 23rd, the market dropped over 4% on really high volume. Nerves were clearly fraying.
And this is where the media's role shifted dramatically.
Critically. For years, newspapers and magazines had celebrated the market, right? Featuring success stories, encouraging everybody to get in.
Making it seem safe and easy.
Exactly. Now, almost overnight, they became amplifiers of panic, using this terrifying immediate language in their headlines.
Like what?
Headlines started screaming things like, "Huge selling wave creates near panic as stocks collapse." Imagine reading that over breakfast.
For an inexperienced public, conditioned to believe the market only went up.
That sudden shift in tone was catastrophic. It turned nervous selling into desperate flight. The psychological dam was about to break. And then Thursday, October 24, 1929, Black Thursday, the desperation just became a stampede. The moment that opening bell rang,
Chaos.
a tidal wave of sell orders just slammed onto the floor. The market opened down a staggering 11%. Instantly, wiping out weeks, months of gains in minutes.
The volume must have been unbelievable.
Instant and overwhelming. The sources say nearly 3 million shares changed hands in the first 3 minutes alone.
3 million shares in 3 minutes.
That's something like $2 million of wealth just vaporizing before most people in New York had even finished their morning coffee.
But the real horror of that day, you said earlier, was the information gap.
Yes. The psychological nightmare of Black Thursday. The ticker tape, that mechanical ribbon spitting out prices, was the only link between the exchange floor and all the brokerage houses across the country where people like the Millers were watching.
And it couldn't keep up.
Couldn't even come close. It was a purely mechanical device, remember. It just wasn't built for this kind of volume, the speed.
How far behind did it actually fall? That detail is just terrifying.
At its worst point that day, the ticker tape was running over 90 minutes behind the actual trades happening on the floor.
90 minutes. An hour and a half delay.
An hour and a half. Imagine, you're the Millers. You're standing nervously in your local brokerage office. You see a price flash across the tape, say U.S. steel at $200.
But that price is already ancient history.
Totally irrelevant. Intuitively, the real price right now is much, much lower. But you have no idea how low. No idea how ruined you actually are.
That uncertainty must have been agonizing.
It created profound bedlam, both on the floor itself, which sources describe as just a chaotic melee of shouting frantic brokers.
And out in the brokerage offices across America.
Yeah, where ordinary people were trying to make life-altering financial decisions while flying completely blind. Just sheer, uninformed panic.
By noon, the market was just in free fall.
Genuine freefall. This finally forced the hand of the powers that be. The institutional power had to act.
The big bankers.
The most powerful bankers in New York,
Yeah.
the real masters of the universe, guys like Charles Mitchell from National City Bank, Thomas Lamont from J.P. & Co. They held an emergency meeting right there at the Morgan offices across the street from the exchange.
What was their goal? To actually buy up all the stock?
Not necessarily cash, no. Their goal was simpler. Stop the bleeding by injecting confidence, making a visible show of strength.
A psychological intervention.
Exactly. They agreed to pool some funds, yes, but critically, they needed a public face for this intervention. A hero for public consumption.
Enter Richard Whitney.
Enter Richard Whitney, the respectable vice president of the exchange. Just after 1:30 p.m., he strides onto the exchange floor.
How did he look? How did he act?
Deliberately calm, visibly confident, utterly theatrical. He walks purposefully over to the trading post for U.S. Steel.
Why U.S. Steel?
Because it was the ultimate symbol of American industrial might, the bedrock stock.
And he places this ostentatious, massive bid.
He doesn't just buy a few shares quietly. No, he announces loudly a bid for 25,000 shares of U.S. Steel at $205.
$205 a share. What was significant about that price?
What made it pure theater was that $205 was significantly above the last recorded sale price, which had been much lower.
Ah, so it wasn't just buying, it was buying high.
It was a visible, unmistakable signal. The big money isn't panicking. They're here. They're buying. This is the bottom. A dramatic vote of confidence meant to stabilize the emotional crowd.
And did it work?
For a brief, glorious moment, yes. It actually worked. The frantic selling subsided. The mood shifted from hysteria back towards cautious relief.
And the market closed.
The market managed to rally significantly in the afternoon and close the day down only about 2%. A huge recovery from the morning's plunge.
So the headlines that evening must have been ecstatic.
Absolutely triumphant. Bankers halt panic. Stock market crisis over. They praised Whitney and the bankers for their courage and decisive action.
But you called it an illusion earlier, a bluff.
A dangerous illusion, yes.
Yeah.
A high-stakes bluff. The sources point out that this whole intervention strategy, the bankers pooling funds, Whitney's grand gesture at home, was based on a playbook that had worked before.
When?
During the panic of 1907, J.P. Morgan himself had orchestrated a similar rescue back then.
Okay, so why didn't it stick this time? What was different about 1929?
Because the market itself had fundamentally changed between 1907 and 1929.
How so?
In 1907, the crisis was largely among a small, relatively controlled group of financial elites. A few powerful men like Morgan could literally lock bankers in a room and dictate terms to their club.
But 1929 wasn't a club anymore.
Not even close. By 1929, the market was this decentralized, emotionally driven, chaotic crowd of millions of investors. Millions of ordinary people, many of them leveraged to the hilt with margin debt, inexperienced and now terrified.
So the bankers' show of confidence.
It bought them maybe 2 days of uneasy calm, Friday and Saturday. But it didn't change the underlying reality of all that margin debt hanging over everyone's heads.
So over the weekend, people had time to think. The millers and millions like them.
They had time to stare at their brokerage statements, maybe talk to their neighbors, and realize the stock market wasn't some magical machine for permanent wealth. It was a machine capable of crushing them with margin calls they couldn't possibly meet.
And the fear came back.
The selling resumed with a vengeance on Monday, October 28th. The market plunged 13%. The banker's bluff had well and truly failed.
And then came Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, Black Tuesday.
The real cataclysm, the point of no return.
Was there another rescue attempt? Another Richard Whitney moment?
No, nothing. This time, the opening bell was just instantly overwhelmed by sell orders. The floodgates didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges. Trading volume hit levels nobody thought was even physically possible.
What was the record?
A historic, staggering record was set. 16.4 million shares traded hands that day. And the market just fell off a cliff, another 12% down.
The sheer amount of wealth loss.
In that single day, Black Tuesday, an estimated $14 billion of paper wealth just vanished. Poof.
14 billion. How much is that in context?
It was more than the entire cost of America's involvement in World War I. Gone in one day.
And this is the final, tragic, probably silent climax for our hypothetical family, the Millers.
Yeah. Their margin calls came due Monday or Tuesday. They had no more cash to deposit. Their stock was instantly sold off by their broker at whatever disastrous price they could get.
Savings gone.
Their $2,000 life savings gone forever. And worse, the broker was likely now demanding the remaining debt from the loan. The party, the promise of permanent prosperity. It was irrevocably, brutally over.
It feels really important here to step back from the stock tickers and the billions of dollars. We need to understand the human fallout.
Absolutely vital. The sources paint this picture of sudden, widespread, almost unimaginable despair. The crash itself wasn't the Great Depression, not yet. But it was the catalyst, the event that shattered the American psyche.
And practically, what did that shattering look like?
Well, it meant families losing their homes, being evicted, migrating, looking for work, any work, ending up in these hastily built shanty towns on the edges of cities.
The ones bitterly nicknamed Hoovervilles.
Yeah, Hoovervilles. A direct, angry jab at President Herbert Hoover, who kept insisting the economy was fundamentally sound and would fix itself without significant government relief.
And you also see these dramatic, almost ironic reversals of fortune.
Oh, absolutely. The stories became legendary. The millionaire who, just months before, commuted to Wall Street by private yacht. Suddenly seen trying to sell that yacht, or his Rolls-Royce, for just $100 in cash. Anything for immediate liquidity.
That sudden, jarring shift must have been terrifying for everyone.
It became the defining visual, didn't it, of the early 1930s. That and the quieter visuals of despair.
Like the bread lines.
The long, silent queues outside bakeries or soup kitchens. Men, often dressed in their old business suits, trying desperately to maintain some shred of dignity while waiting for a handout. The shame, the confusion. It was palpable in the photos and accounts.
We should probably address that persistent myth, though. The image of stockbrokers jumping from Wall Street windows.
Yeah, it's a powerful image, but the sources are pretty clear. While it captures the feeling of despair, there wasn't some sudden massive wave of broker suicides right there on the exchange floor in October 29.
But suicide rates did rise.
Oh yes, significantly. Across the country, the suicide rate climbed steadily over the next few years, actually peaking in 1932, deep into the Depression.
So the fear, the existential dread that fueled the myth, the sudden crushing realization that the system had utterly betrayed them.
That was absolutely real. Very, very real. Even if the literal window-jumping events are largely exaggerated. The crash didn't just destroy wealth, it shattered confidence in the entire capitalist structure. For millions.
And that shattering of confidence that then led directly to the next phase of the crisis, right? The banking crisis.
Exactly. The stock market crash triggered this catastrophic crisis of faith in the banking system itself, which led to these massive, terrifying, self-fulfilling bank runs.
Explain how that worked. Why did a stock market crash cause Main Street banks to fail?
Well, remember that interconnected call loan structure we talked about, Section 2?
Right. The banks and corporations lending money to the brokers.
Billions of dollars. When the market collapsed and the brokers couldn't collect the margin debt from the ruined Millers, those call loans became worthless, toxic assets on the bank's books.
So banks started failing almost immediately.
Immediately. Due to bad stock investments they held themselves, and especially due to these suddenly worthless call loans. And word gets out fast.
And because there was no federal safety net, no deposit insurance.
Precisely the problem. There was no FDIC back then. So if you, Mrs. Miller, heard even a rumor that your local bank down the street might be in trouble because of its Wall Street loans,
you'd run down there immediately to get your cash out.
You and everyone else. You'd rush to withdraw your life savings before the doors closed for good. Because if the bank went under,
your money was just gone. Forever.
Vanished.
Gone forever. This fear created panic runs that could destroy even relatively sound banks overnight. In 1930 alone, the year after the crash, over 1,300 banks failed across the United States.
1,300 banks in 1 year. That's just staggering.
It is the ultimate systemic failure, isn't it? It wasn't just the speculation that was the problem. It was the completely unprotected nature of basic savings for ordinary people.
So let's try to synthesize this. We circle back one last time to the why. Why did it happen? The sources seem to agree it wasn't just one thing.
No, definitely not. It was a perfect storm, really. A confluence of factors that exposed these deep fundamental weaknesses in the whole system.
Okay, so factor one, the culture. This irrational exuberance.
Yeah, the widespread cultural belief that the old rules were suspended, that this time was different, that prosperity was permanent. Factor two, The disconnect between the bubble and reality.
The crucial disconnect, yeah, between the speculative market fueled by debt and the already slowing real economy underneath, which was choked by overproduction and stagnant wages.
And factor 3, maybe the most important structural one.
The deeply flawed and critically unregulated financial system, a system that placed immense leverage margin debt, facilitated by those incredible vulnerable call loans into the hands of millions of financially unprotected and inexperienced citizens.
So the system was designed to amplify success.
Brilliantly. But it was structurally incapable of managing failure. It had no shock absorbers, no safety mechanisms. It was built for sunshine and collapsed instantly in the storm.
And the ultimate legacy of this spectacular, devastating failure, ironically perhaps, was the birth of the modern, regulated American economy.
Absolutely. The sources argue very convincingly that the old laissez-faire regulatory approach basically inherited from the 19th century was just utterly, fundamentally incompatible with the new, complex, interconnected mass market economy of the 20th century. Just didn't work anymore.
And the sheer trauma of 1929 and the decade of depression that followed?
It made sweeping financial reform politically inevitable. Impossible to resist. It literally destroyed that outdated financial framework.
And forced the creation of the safety mechanisms we maybe take for granted today.
Exactly. Things like the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, designed specifically to regulate the markets, control leverage like margin, and protect investors from fraud.
And the FDIC.
And crucially, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, which guarantees basic bank deposits, preventing those catastrophic bank runs born of pure fear.
The price was just brutal, unimaginably brutal for a generation.
But those reforms, born directly out of that cataclysm, they are the fundamental structural reason why we haven't seen another market collapse of that same sheer systemic confidence-destroying magnitude in nearly a century. Hashtag tag outro.
You know, it's remarkably easy, isn't it, looking back almost 100 years later, to look at the investors of 1929, the Millers and their neighbors, and just dismiss them, call them foolish or greedy.
Yeah, judge them pretty harshly.
And they were certainly reckless, you could argue, caught up in the frenzy. But the sources remind us they were also just people living through this time of incredible, dizzying change, technological miracles happening all around them.
And they genuinely believed, most of them, that they had found this permanent, easy path to shared prosperity. They were utterly convinced, weren't they, that the old rules of economic gravity had somehow been repealed.
And the consequence of that conviction, of that belief,
Was a decade of profound, grinding national despair. The Great Depression.
Which leaves us, maybe, with the final provocative thought that the sources kind of encourage us to mull over today, right now.
Yeah.
Well, we sit here in our own world, also full of dizzying change, right? New digital technologies transforming everything, new kinds of assets appearing, constant promises of endless growth from new sectors.
Sounds familiar.
Doesn't it? And we often see new forms of, let's be honest, unregulated or lightly regulated financial leverage, new social technologies, maybe online, that promise shortcuts to wealth, democratizing risk again.
So as we study the collapse of that system back then, a system built on uncritical optimism and fundamentally unsupported leverage, we have to ask ourselves, don't we?
What's the question?
Are we so sure our own system today is permanent? What fundamental beliefs, what regulatory structures are we currently accepting as unshakable? And maybe more pointedly, what new, highly leveraged social or financial technologies are we embracing with that same uncritical optimism without fully understanding their potential for another mass casualty pileup?
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.